Hello, my name is Mike Fogel. I happen to be the chair of the Yavapai County Democrats. Now, we first aired this third Thursday, last Thursday. And unfortunately, there was a technological glitch whereby my original introduction to the program and to our guest speaker was not recorded. And so we're having to do an additional recording of my introduction at a later date. Well, in the meantime, I had my beard trimmed and I look very different than I do in much of the video you are about to see. Believe me, trust me, that is me, even though I look different. Okay, so after having gotten that straightened out, it's a great pleasure to welcome all of you people who are part of this program, viewing this program this evening. The topic is election transparency, which is extremely relevant to today's issues that are of utmost concern to Arizona residents. And this issue is presented legislatively, Senate Bill 1324 and House Bill 2560. And in order to get us started on this, before I introduce you to our speaker, I'd like to refer to a journalistic piece that was presented in the Arizona Mirror in conjunction with VoteBeat this past week. The title of this article is "A Bill to Enable Do-It-Yourself Election Audits Sparks Rare Bipartisan Interest in Arizona." The author, Jen Fifield, in her report says this, and I quote, "In a legislative session marked with hostility and party line votes, this idea from Senator Bennett, that is Senate Bill 1024, a Republican and a former Secretary of State, has brought about a rare cross-party dialogue. Both sides set aside their talking points during the meeting, with no emphasis from Republicans on unproven theories or of stolen elections, according to the video snippets shared with VoteBeat, and no stonewalling from Democrats," end quote. Folks, I suggest civility is possible. And it's with this spirit that I'd like to introduce tonight's speaker, Mr. John Brakey. John Brakey is the director and co-founder of AUDIT Elections USA. AUDIT is an acronym for Americans United for Democracy, Integrity, and Transparency, a 501c3 NGO that advocates and litigates for public oversight of federal, state, and local elections. AUDIT Election USA evolved from AUDIT Election AZ, which Mr. Brakey co-founded in 2004. Mr. Brakey's signature phrase, and I quote, "Elections must be transparent, trackable, and publicly verified," end quote, is becoming ingrained in the language of politicians and election integrity advocates across the U.S. I bring you Mr. John Brakey.
I first want to take this opportunity to thank our host tonight, the Yavapai County Democratic Party, for having me. Thank you for joining us tonight to talk about an important election bill called SB 1324 that is making its way through the Arizona Senate, and its twin bill making its way through the Arizona House, HB 2560. As a lifelong progressive Democrat in Arizona, I have deeply been involved in election integrity since 2005. In 2005, I was runner-up for Democrat of the Year in Arizona, recognized for my work in elections. Over the last 18 years, I have worked alongside others to make elections better in Arizona. From 2005 to 2010, I had the privilege of working under former Representative Ted Downing, chair of the Arizona Democratic Party Election Committee. Since then, I have continued to devote my time and energy to this critical work. I am a co-founder and director of Audit Elections USA based out of Tucson, Arizona. AUDIT is an acronym, and it stands for Americans United for Democracy, Integrity, and Transparency. Audit USA began as Audit Arizona in late 2004. In 2016, we expanded into a national organization due to a lawsuit that we brought in Pima County that led to the state preserving ballot images rather than destroying evidence that literally could prove that elections are real. We are a nonpartisan, nonprofit 501c3 organization. We are a group of citizens who believe that elections belong to the people, not to political parties or corporations. Over the past 18 years, we've had some incredible successes affecting election policies, procedures, and raising awareness around the country. And we have become experts in many areas of election policies and procedures. While much of the country is focused on election problems, we've been focused on solutions, as I will begin to explain to you. Transparency in elections is essential for building trust in the democratic process. In recent years, our election systems have become more secure due to increased vigilance against phishing attacks by foreign actors, particularly in the wake of the 2016 Russian interference. However, the unfortunate consequences of this heightened security has been a major decrease in transparency, which can breed mistrust, particularly when it appears to be orchestrated by authoritarian personalities like Donald Trump, who is working with AstroTurf grifters to manipulate public opinion. It's important to strike a balance between security and transparency in our election systems to ensure that the public has faith in the legitimacy of our democratic process. Why is transparency important? Transparency equals truth, because when things are transparent, people can see what's actually happening. Transparency equals security against false claims, because when people can see what's actually happening, then false claims cannot stick. Senate Bill 1324 has 4 parts. 1, a list of all eligible voters are eligible registered to vote, including both active and inactive voters. A list of everyone who actually did vote in the election, not including names from protected voters. This is important. A lot of conspiracies were talked about. They say that more people voted than were on. The inactive list in Maricopa is 285,000 people. In Pima County, it's somewhere around 45 to 50,000. It's normal that on an inactive list in our state, 9% of the people are on it. Next item, all the ballot images from the election. All the cast vote records from the election. Those are the 4 items that are very important to us. These records will be allowed to anyone to verify that the election was real and not fall victim to false claims. If ballot images are released to just one auditor or one group, such as happened in the Cyber Ninjas after the 2020 election, that one group can misrepresent the information, and that public has no way to know that it was false claims. But if everyone has access to the same information, it is much harder for anyone to falsify or misrepresent the information. And if they try, they will immediately be caught. This bill crowdsources the truth. In addition, a proposed amendment to the bill will make it a felony to alter or misrepresent election data of election results. There are a few things that is important to know. 1, ballot images are anonymous. Your ballot is anonymous. From the moment your ballot leaves your hand, it cannot be traced back to you. The ballot image is just a picture of a person's anonymous ballot. 2, the ballot image cannot be released until after certification, so there is no way they can use to delay certification. 3, anyone who requests a voter's list will have to give their name and address and phone number and email address and agree that they will not use the voter list for commercial purposes or for a voter intimidation. A proposed amendment states that anyone who uses the list for voter intimidation or transfers the list over the internet will be guilty of a felony. Next item. Also, anyone will be guilty of a felony if they use any combination of election records to reveal how someone voted. By the way, you don't need the images. There are red herrings. The canvass report in Pima County is 800 pages. This is really not a big problem, but we are concerned. There has been some concerns expressed about what happened if someone writes their name on the ballot. This is a non-issue for many reasons. It's very rare for anyone to write their name on their ballot. Ballot selfies, by the way, are legal in Arizona. A name on a ballot is not official signature. It's not like signing your name at the motor vehicle registration for voter registration. And just because a name is written on a ballot doesn't mean it is the name of the person who voted the ballot. We ask that you read this revised bill, which is greatly improved, and please make note of who is supporting this bill. Our team consists mostly of Democrats, understands the significance of transparency in building trust and maintaining a healthy democracy. Consider who's supporting this bill, notably lifelong Democrats such as Dr. Tom Ryan, a PhD, electronic engineering with 30 years of experience in digital scanning technology, and the former chair of the Pima County Election Integrity Commission. Dr. Ryan helped draft and supports SB 1324. Attorney Bill Reisner, a former Democratic representative. Dr. Ted Downing has been working on election integrity issues since 2000 election, dedicating years to studying election problems. They support this bill. Mickey Donahoe, a master programmer who retired after 37 years with the National Security Agency, was one of the top 50 computer scientists at NSA and an audit board member and a former member of the Pima County Election Integrity Commission. Mickey helped draft and supports this bill. Then there is my mentor, Arizona election attorney Bill Reisner, Tucson lawyer since 1968. Bill has been active in the Democratic Party since before 1968, when he became a lawyer and has a Democratic Party candidate for the Arizona legislature. Bill first represented Pima County Democratic Party in redistricting lawsuits in the 1970s. Bill Reisner functioned as the county's party election attorney for decades on a volunteer basis, including several successful lawsuits against the Board of Supervisors. He supports SB 1324. Since 2017, Washington, D.C. attorney Chris Sauter, another good friend who has joined our team. Chris is a nationally known election attorney who has participated in every major recount in the country since 1984. Chris literally wrote the book on recounts called The Recount Primer in 1994. In 2016, Chris Sauter and I convinced the Madison, Wisconsin, Dane County election official to preserve and publicly release ballot images after every election. Chris Sauter heads up our activities in Florida. Chris Sauter supports this bill and is one of the attorneys representing Florida's Democratic Party in their lawsuit to get ballot images preserved, publicly released in Florida. Chris wrote to me and said, "John Brakey is correct. The solution to mistrust is transparency with redundancy and verification. Counting using one method and recounting using another, plus the digital ballot images. Goal is to have evidence-based, transparent elections nationwide, where the public can see records that verify election results. One of our signature efforts is to ensure that election offices across the United States are preserving ballot images. As Dr. Tom Ryan said, in summary, deleting ballot images significantly undermines the integrity of the election system that derives all of its tabulation data from these images. Folks, we're talking chain of custody, and chain of custody is everything in elections. Not everyone is familiar with ballot images, so I'll give you a brief introduction to them in hopes that you will see how important they are and join us in our efforts to preserve these important election records and make them available to the public. So, what are ballot images? Well, over 90% of all the voting systems in the United States today use digital scan technology. A digital scan voting machine takes a picture of every ballot. The votes are counted from the picture, not from the paper ballot itself. This makes the image an important document in the chain of custody in counting every vote. But unbelievably, many election offices across the country are destroying these images, which prevent the public from being able to independently request and verify the vote counts. The ballot images are the basis for all final vote counts. All data that is produced is from the results of the ballot images. We have also fought for hand-marked paper ballots and against unverifiable ballot marking devices called BMDs. Audit USA is an organization who's not interested in who wins any election. Our sole interest is in the accurate count of all votes and verification of those results. Transparency, again, equals truth. Abe Lincoln believed in transparency as evidenced by this famous quote, "I have faith in the people. They will not consent to disunion. The danger is they are misled. Let them know the truth, and the country is safe." Abraham Lincoln. We know that transparency is the currency of trust, and so doesn't our great Secretary of State of Arizona, Adrian Fontes. To quote our new Secretary of State, "The cancer in our democracy is disinformation. We must kill the illusions of conspiracies through transparency. This can be achieved by making elections publicly verified with ballot images." My friend and mentor, Bill Reisner, says, "Verification and transparency are the foundation in confidence. Confidence is the destination, and the way to get there is through transparency and verification. When the public can see how voting systems operate and verify their accuracy, they will trust election results. If the public trust election results, many of the divisions we are experiencing in our country today will disappear. Many people doubt the integrity of the election process. It means they might not even bother to vote. You know, if you look at the 2020 election, which was the highest turnout in 120 years, it's hard to believe this number, but 80 million people didn't vote. By showing that election results are accurate, we can help restore the faith in our democracy. We are educating not only public, but also educating election officials themselves. We are helping them understand that saving ballot images and making them available to the public can bring together people from diverse political backgrounds to unite them around transparency, trackable, and publicly verified elections. Our method is education, advocacy, and litigation, only if necessary. Please help us build on this momentum to protect American elections through public oversight and real transparency, which is vital to overcoming the general cynicism that is all too prevalent today. If you have questions, speak up tonight or contact us by email or by phone as we reflect on the elections of 2020 and the efforts for 22 and the 24 election coming. We see it both as an exciting time and a critical time to step up our efforts. We at Audit USA know that the problems in elections are complicated. However, we know the solution is simple. It's called transparency, which again is the currency of trust. And without it in our democracy, could die in darkness. We at Audit USA hope to get this bill passed with Republicans and Democratic votes and then launch it nationally. Our country needs elections that we all can believe in. We know that our bill will eventually be known as the big lie killer because facts can change beliefs. Think what Lincoln said. Preventing the rise of authoritarianism and hate requires a collective effort from all members of society. It's crucial to cultivate a culture of respect, tolerance, and empathy, and actively promote these values in our interaction with others. By working together, we can create a safer and more inclusive society that is less vulnerable to the influence of grifters, hate, and extremism. In the chat, I'm going to provide links to videos and documents and links that will explain our bill. I look forward to taking questions, but at first, I would like you to give several minutes of my time to a colleague that I've worked with very closely for many years and who has something very important to add to this conversation. Take it away, Susan Pinshaw. And for those who don't know her, she was in the movie Hacking Democracy, what was on HBO back in 2006, I believe. And she's just a remarkable person. And I call her my sister, and I'm close. We work together also with many other people across the country. So again, take it away, Susan.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I'll make this brief. A nice turnout tonight. And I'm happy to see you all. I'm sorry my video's not working this evening, but I wanted to tell you I'm actually located in Florida. I do work with John Brakey at Audit USA, but I founded my own organization in 2004 called Florida Fair Elections Coalition. We fought for hand-marked paper ballots in Florida. The ACLU gave me an award, which they usually reserve for governors and congresspeople, in 2006. I got an award from them for protecting voting rights in Florida. I was also after that on the state board of the Florida ACLU. So I wanted to tell you tonight that in Florida, the Democrats are desperate. The Democrats are desperate for ballot images to be made publicly available and to be preserved. It's the Republicans that are opposing them. And I've been fighting for ballot images for years now. In my county, Volusia County, which is the 12th largest, Florida has 67 counties, unlike Arizona's 15 counties. So we have a lot of counties. But my county is the 12th largest in the state. And my supervisor of elections has been saving ballot images since 2018. And after the 2020 election, just like election administrators all over the country, she got bombarded in Florida, believe it or not. Even though Trump won in Florida, the Republicans were still convinced that he should have won by more. So our election officials were getting the same stuff that was happening in Arizona and all around the country. And because she had saved the ballot images, and because we had done an analysis of that, when she got bombarded, she just sent out the little analysis of the ballot images, and people were completely satisfied by that. And they had public access to them. So I'm telling you guys, if you realized the benefit of these images and what they can do for public confidence and what they can do, I'm so hopeful that this bill is going to be a model for the whole country, because it's just unbelievable when you see the analyses of these ballot images. Let me just, and then I'm going to be quiet because I know I only have another probably 1 minute. But so you have a ballot image that's the picture of, once the ballot leaves your hand, it's anonymous, and that ballot gets scanned. And as John said, the vote is actually counted from the image. And then there's this little record created for each image, and it shows how that vote was counted. So you can actually go back and look at the image, and then you can look and see how the voting system interpreted that image. So, for example, we have samples, like one sample shows a vote for Joe Biden, and then on the little cast vote record, and all those little cast vote records become a huge spreadsheet of all the votes in the county. but there's an individual one for each ballot image. So there's show a vote for Joe Biden, and then the cast vote record says counted. That was counted for Joe. That's how the voting system saw the oval, saw it filled in, and they counted the vote for Joe Biden. But then there's another one where someone circled the oval instead of filling it in. The voting machine counted that as an undervote, not as a vote. And that's what in Arizona, you've heard about adjudication. That's what adjudication is all about. You know, they go back and actually look at those and see, was that actually a vote, or did the voting system misinterpret it somehow? So when you look at these ballot images and see the analysis, it's so fascinating. I could look at these things all day and all night. And people can check their own precinct. They could check their whole county. And I know that you're all, you know, war weary from being battered by the Republicans in Arizona after 2020. But this is not about that, you guys. This is really way beyond that. And I mean, and then the last thing I'm going to say is, I would almost give my right arm if I could have the ballot images in Florida from the 2016 and the 2020 election, because here, there are a lot of things that sometimes seem suspect, and I would just love to have those. And, you know, eventually you may have an election where you really want to really see what happened. So anyway, I really urge you to keep an open mind about this, to really consider endorsing it. And John didn't mention, but, you know, it was on the Democratic Party platform in Arizona. In 2010, ballot images were part of the Democratic Party platform. So just because the Republicans are for this now does not make this a bad bill. It's really important. Okay, thank you so much. There's one other person that John had wanted to say a couple words. Jan, do you have anything to add? Or Jan Bendor is in Arizona right now from Michigan. She's been an elections official for many years and has her own integrity group there. She's an amazing person. She's accomplished so much. Jan, did you want to add just a couple words?
I would appreciate it, and I appreciate Maricela Brakey loaning me her computer. I would like to add a few things that are of a different nature. Much as I am passionate about protecting democracy, I'm also passionate about protecting people from domestic violence and other forms of violence. I was the chair for 16 years of the Washtenaw County, Michigan domestic violence shelter, Safe House. In fact, we were the first publicly funded shelter. We helped mafia wives hide, and that's pretty tough. So I'm super sensitive to the exposure of identity in any way. And it is often a delicate balancing act between transparency and protection of privacy. So I've been here for over a week helping to achieve that balance. And if you have read a previous version of the bill, throw it out, just throw it out. We've completely rewritten it. And there will be no posting of any private information on websites. The information will be provided, but under very restrictive circumstances. And I think you'll be pleased when you see how tightly we have written it. We've done a number of other things to satisfy the very strong objections that people have come up with. Some of their objections, very understandable, considering, I mean, if you've ever received death threats, as I have, it's kind of scary that somebody knows exactly how to find you or your family. But we're working on this very closely, and we have a lot of these objections addressed. And I'm very sorry to see that some people think this is a MAGA bill. It's not. It's basically been written by Democratic women, and it will be a bill we hope will be sponsored primarily by Democratic legislators. And I'm hoping to be able to take this bill home to Michigan and pass it for our environment, because since 2018, we've had the same images and they've been thrown out, except 3 of our 83 counties, and they give them out. They're very generous, but it's very hard to do research if you don't have these images. It's much harder to take photographs of ballots. These images are already there. They should be retained, and they can really inform us about how our democracy is working if we handle them intelligently. So I hope everybody here will keep an open mind, look at the new version, and support it if it meets your concerns.
And there are penalties now for, you really are going to like this revised version of this bill. It's really very, very different. Also, and just, I think one other concern was that people were afraid that the images would be released before certification of the election and might hold up certification somehow. No, they're going to be released after the election certified. They'll be there for people. It's for voter confidence, and it's so that any one of you can look and say, yep, this really happened. This is, as John always says, transparent, trackable, and publicly verified. And that should be the goal for all our elections. So we urge you, the new version will be out any day now. And please look at it carefully, because we think you're really going to like it. Thank you so much.
In fact, it's coming out right now. I'm pushing the button and it's there. There's a link. Everybody will be able to share it, and you'll see exactly how the thing has been restructured, with an emphasis of nothing going posted online.
Caveat on releasing that is the attorneys in the legislature have not reviewed. There could still be some tweaks. So just so you know, this is not final, but it's.
There are lots of questions coming from our audience, and let's get to them. I'm going to work to read them in the order that I received them or have been received in the chat. So the first one from Dave reads, I've read there aren't as many privacy safeguards in this bill as similar laws have in other cities and states. I'm mostly concerned about publishing the names, addresses of people who voted and those who didn't. John.
Well, read what I just posted, and whoever wrote that, thank you. It's not going to be that way, and we are going to make sure, but I do want you to know that somebody could spend about $580 and buy 4.3 million records, and it's a lot more records than what we want. We're very limited. What do you want to add?
Yeah, no, just, I don't know if you're all aware that the voter lists are already available by statute. Right. ARS 16-168 or 618, I guess it is. And you can already request them and get way more information that is going to be provided on this list. By statute now, you can get even people's telephone numbers. So this is just a basic list, just enough so that we won't get this craziness about the lists are, not correct, and the lists are this and the lists are that. The idea is to have a list before the election so that you can see who's eligible to vote, and then a list after the election so you can see who voted and be able to compare those and say, yep, that works. They're the same. And just prevent all that insanity that happened after the 2020 election.
Absolutely. Okay. Just to add to that is the conspiracy from the right saying, look at all these people who voted that weren't on the list. Well, they have two lists. They have an active list and an inactive list, okay? And they use the active list to set the threshold of being able to say that Maricopa had an 81% turnout when they had 285,000 people on an inactive list. And then all of a sudden you have precincts getting around 100%, people saying, that's impossible. And where do all these names come from? Well, if you can walk into a voting center in Maricopa and you can stick your driver's license and reactivate yourself, we think you're on the active list. And so why two lists? You take, if you're going to do an audit, the first thing you want to know is that how many people voted. And we want to know that there's a legit voters. So there would be a list of everybody who can vote, one list against the other. No surprises. Okay. Right. 800 people voted. Then there should be 800 images. If you wind up with 1,000 by accident, somebody might have counted a batch twice. We're trying to build a system that's like balancing a checkbook. Okay. And if we do that, maybe we'll get better candidates. Maybe more people will vote. The reality is in the 2020 election, if not voting was a presidential candidate that would have won by a landslide, okay? 80 million people didn't vote. And what was that all about? A lot of people don't have time. They don't believe it's real. And a lot of them joined the Mark Twain party. And that's the party that believes that if voting made a difference, they wouldn't let us do it. It's important that people know that it's real and take it seriously. Thank you.
This one's from Kathleen. Yes. Do you believe that had this ballot image program been in place in 2022, that this would have stopped the lawsuits from the losing GOP candidates?
Yes.
Absolutely. Oh my God, I was involved in that thing. It was a fraud. They knew after counting the first 500 batches that it was adding up perfect. But what they were doing was milking the sheeple, okay? And it's pretty easy to milk the sheeple when you have a President Trump out there saying, hey, the grifter's right, the grifter's right. I went into that audit, not as a Democrat. I went in there as a person who studied elections for 18 years full time. And I went in there not to help the Republicans, but to help the Republic, our country. And I'm an expert. And I used to be a psychotherapist, but that's because I did form a relationship with Ken Bennett. And I found out that maybe me and Ken don't vote the same way, but I do know he loves his children. I love mine. I love my country. We found ourselves in the same foxhole because Ken Bennett does have a flaw. It's a pretty serious flaw. He's honest to a flaw, okay? And that's what they didn't like. They even tried to get me to turn on him. And I couldn't believe the games that were played by these grifters. And I do think that our country is in serious trouble, all of this. I feel I work all over the country. I've been in 18 states. And I feel like that I'm living in a country where there's people with brown shirts are walking down the street and everybody's saying, hey, those crazy people, ignore them, ignore them. I find that ignoring people is not a solution. Engaging and helping them understand that it's better to understand than be understood as a person who would follow a guy with an orange face.
So let me follow up with this. They, the GOP, claimed, among other things, that ballots were not counted. If the claim is a ballot was not counted, then the assumption would be that it was not imaged as well. Is that correct?
Well, the system would reject the image. I want you to know that. And in the Dominion system, they would send it to electronic adjudication. And the ballot and the ballot images married to each other so they can go back and pull it if they have to. But the machine would tell it right away and then pull the batch back up. I like electronic adjudication. It's a very important process. And I hope that every county eventually, I know that a lot of small counties are very concerned about releasing because typically small counties are under budget and all they do is push a button and then it gives the results. And they don't realize that 80% of our vote now is by envelope. And you'd be surprised the mistakes that, like Susan talked about, circling a circle. And so they do need on close elections that we will help them understand how to use the cast vote record in the cast vote record database, which is a spreadsheet, and convert it to what I call a BIA, a ballot image audit system. It gets back to like balancing a checkbook again. You want to check the checks to make sure they're right. And it's not a hard process. You don't need to check elections that are 60-40, but if an election is in 1% and the new threshold is 1%, I would advise a county to use the cast vote record and then have the images available to go back and take a look and look for those errors.
Okay, so John, ballot secrecy is really an important concept in our republic and our democracy, and people are afraid of these images and how they might violate ballot secrecy. So how will these bills safeguard against violation of ballot secrecy?
Well, it's pretty simple. They're anonymous already, okay? And how we're going to release them and how people can use them. Now, with like any system, you're going to have some situations like there could be a precinct and there could be one person who voted a provisional ballot. And if you went and got another record, okay, which you would need to get the signature roster and see who that provisional, you might be able to out them. Some people also say, boy, if they get those ballot images, they could sell their vote. And you know, there's a couple of things that go along with that. We live in a state that they mail you your ballot 30 days. And if you're into selling your vote, I guess they can come by the back door of your kitchen, as Tom Ryan would say, and pay you your bucks or whatever to betray your country. Okay. And then secondly, ballot selfies are illegal in the state of Arizona. I can take my ballot, take a picture of it, and say, oh, look at this. I voted for Biden. See, you know what I'm saying? That's legal. Okay. So realistically, we're not releasing any of this data until 2 days after the canvass report. They've agreed to extend the time period because I don't want people pulling this stuff feeling they're getting cheated out of 2 days, because I know it's all going to add up perfect because this is what they use. And it's a great system. And I don't understand why we're not using it completely in our state. And I think we will, thanks to Fontes, thanks to past Secretary of States. And I think Hobbs is going to be with us too.
So to sort of follow up with that, though, there's a fear that someone might have the ability to match a voter to a ballot image, and thus they're outed, to use your term. How does the bill safeguard against that?
So there are a couple things, Mike. First of all, there's a felony penalty for anyone, and this is in the bill, for anyone who reveals how anyone else voted. Secondly, the odds of finding out how someone, for example, if there was, say there was a tiny precinct split, you know, only one person in the fire district or something in that part of that precinct, and they had a specific ballot style, you could find that out right now looking at the canvass report, the election results. It doesn't take ballot images. You can already determine that. So, you know, it's incumbent on the election officials to try to keep the precincts as large as possible, not narrow that down. But literally, if somebody wanted to try to find out how one individual voted, it would be literally impossible, because the only way you'd ever possibly know is, again, like say one provisional ballot in a tiny precinct. And that's probably not the person you're looking for. Do you know what I mean? It would just be a random. And so now we have this felony penalty on top of it to reveal how anyone voted. So, and it has not been a problem. In Florida, half the counties are saving the images, and they are public record in Florida once they're saved. San Francisco posts the ballot images online. There haven't been problems. Dane County, Wisconsin posts online. Maryland, the entire state does a ballot image audit. So it's a solution without a problem, you know, or a solution looking for a problem. It really hasn't been a problem. And there's one other thing people complain about, which is, you can stop me if I go on too long, please. So, but is you know, people writing on their ballots. Do you want to know about that? If someone writes their name on the ballot?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. That is coming up. There are things that can occur on a ballot that might be revealing.
Yes. So I'd like to address that, which is, first of all, Mike, I could write your name on my ballot. Just because someone writes a name on a ballot doesn't mean that's their ballot. It's not an official signature. You know, you sign at the Bureau of Motor Vehicles, or you sign your voter registration. Those are official signatures. Somebody can scrawl something on their ballot, and it's not official. And clearly that person's not looking for privacy if they put their signature somewhere. And I've looked at thousands of ballots in Florida, because paper ballots are actually public record here. One time I saw somebody had crossed something out and put their initials next to it. I've never seen a signature, so I'm not saying that they couldn't show up, but again, it's not an issue. It's really, and there's actually something, it's referred to in the bill now. There's an actual statute in Arizona. Oh no, we didn't refer to it but it says, I can give you the statute number in a minute when I think about it, that, it says that if somebody reveals how they voted, that they have voluntarily given up their right to privacy.
And Susan, I would just like to add that in 18 years as an election administrator, where I saw thousands of ballots, there was exactly one. And it was, the signature was below a rather fulsome quote from scripture. And clearly this individual was not looking for privacy. However, under Michigan law, if you put your name on your ballot, you will not have your ballot counted. It's a very strict punishment. I wouldn't recommend that for Arizona unless this becomes a problem. But 1 in 18 years, I don't think we got a problem. And as Susan says, we don't need to solve a non-existent problem.
Okay, so continuing. Tracy has some comments, and she starts by saying, I guess I'm confused. It has been no secret that MAGA wants us to believe election systems are broken. And this event seems to push the problems with elections narrative. Seems that there are no elections proposals we're supporting now, especially proposals submitted by Ken Bennett.
First of all, Ken proposed that because Ken and John became friends during the Cyber Ninjas audit when John was there observing and outing them on a lot of the things they were doing. And I've had a lot of dealings. I mean, I'm a Democrat personally. My organization is nonpartisan. I'm a lifelong progressive Democrat. I have so far found Ken Bennett to be a very honorable person. I do not agree with some of his other politics, but on the subject of elections, they are nonpartisan. And so the fact that you can't, please don't oppose this bill just because it was introduced by a Republican. And that's why I'm letting you guys know that in Florida, it's just the opposite. The Democrats, I'm a plaintiff in a lawsuit that the Florida Democratic State Party is a plaintiff in a lawsuit for Ballot Images, the entire Democratic State Party. So please don't be, misled by the fact just because this was proposed by a Republican does not make this a bad bill. Again, it was on the Democratic platform in Arizona in 2010. It is possible to have a nonpartisan bill. Thank you, or bipartisan. Thank you.
We have John McCarthy with his hand up, and John is an incredible scientist, okay? He's one of the founders of Verified Voting, okay? And he's not here representing Verified Voting. I don't want to get anybody that impression, but go ahead, John. You need to unmute yourself.
Yep.
Thanks. I actually spent most of the day on a Zoom call with a group called the Election Verification Network, which is holding a conference in Washington, D.C. And I had put together a panel on election transparency and observation for trustworthy elections. And that it's not an advocacy group in and of itself. It includes election officials and academics and lawyers and it's mainly for exchange of ideas, but it's all about evidence-based elections. What we really need is empirical evidence of the paper ballots, and in this case, they can be represented by ballot images and then confirmed by an audit to make sure that the images match their corresponding paper records. I've gotten to be a real advocate of ballot images because they can be used. I'm also involved with risk limiting audits and other kinds of audits. I've been a member of a so-called state audit working group since 2008. That group has done a lot in a way of risk limiting audits. I was involved in helping Colorado put together their risk limiting audit regulations. And as a matter of fact, Colorado is close to, they're really pushing getting both the ballot images and the cast vote records made public in the way that this bill would do. It's a way that if you do it right, then it is a way that if people say that a certain number of votes were not right, then you can say, all right, count them, count these images. And that can be applied not just to the big statewide contests, but right down to the ones for local school board and the planning commission, where oftentimes those are the really critical races, and they're often decided by fairly close margins. So giving a variety of people and organizations the basic evidence that they can analyze themselves, I think has a lot of value. Thanks for letting me join your meeting.
So moving on then, Maria asks, does this mean that every county use the same software from registration through the entire process? And do you intend that the systems eventually be in use nationwide?
Well, I would say that a good idea is something that spreads very fast. Okay. And by the way, Maryland's been doing this since 2016. We probably have the most advanced system if we do it the way we're talking about doing it. Okay. Because we're talking about releasing on a precinct basis, because that's a simple lower denomination. And even though most precincts are virtual in our state now, okay, because we've gone to voting centers, like Maricopa, you can walk into a voting center and you could have 741 different precincts available there, okay, which has 2,500 ballot styles or more, okay? And so we think of it this way. If we can pull together and look hard at this and take a good look at what I posted, because, you know, security is, we're going to be very tight on that. And it's a class 5 felony, not a 6, because Ken, we got tonight finished up that part. Yeah, we need to get both parties together, push this bill out, and say to the country, no more will we'll ever do a audit like we did. We were the worst state in the union. We had 48 lawsuits the last I knew. The next state had 28, okay? And this is how we're gonna take it back, by proving to the people on the far right, like Gail Gorlick or somebody like that, that here's the proof and time to back down and leave us. And but we do need to reach out and convince people if we're going to go ahead and move on, because it seems like we're stuck on Groundhog Day and it's still the 2000 election, okay? And we got severe problems with all sorts of things, and we got to move on and make decisions, and we have to know that we have a functioning democracy to make those changes.
And Mike, to just answer that specific question, no, it would not require a universal system that's the same system. The ballot images are on Dominion, they're on ES&S, they're on Hard InterCivic, they're on Clear Ballot. All the major voting system vendors' systems now are digital scanners. They all produce ballot images. They all have their own version of a cast vote record. So no, it's not aiming towards some, you know, big brother nationwide, one single voting system. This is on all systems.
If I could interject a question that I found and I had sort of prepared, because it relates a little bit to what you were just saying, John. And this is a comment from Senator Juan Mendez, a Democrat, who he's come out in opposition to this. And he is afraid that this will give conspiracy theorists even more kindling for the fire. How would you respond to that? I mean, we
I
had
would say-
48, I think that was the number you used, 48 lawsuits, the most than anywhere around the country. Won't this just open that up even that much more?
You know, if we, you know, Ken and me, we're trying to get the ballot images, and we had a company out of San Diego that would run the 2.1 million images. They were going to count everything on the ballot, just not two races. And it would have saved, and that whole thing would have cost $50,000. Oh, that's it. Okay. And the reality is they milked it and took in 9 million.
And Mike,
Okay,
just a
yeah,
quick, to answer, you want to answer that also, your question, that's what we were saying before, that the secure transparency is security. The crisis and chaos comes when nobody can prove that these false claims are false. They can walk out and say whatever the hell they want, and nobody can refute it because nobody else has access to the record. So when you guys can look and see that's completely false, then, and the whole state can look and see that it's completely false, then that's just going to take all the wind out of their sails. Plus, as John just said, it's going to be a felony if they misrepresent or alter anything that isn't the way it was presented.
Along the same lines that of this current sort of questioning comes this question. Will these bills ensure all ballots are made public? Or are there some ballots that will never become part of the imaged record? And if that is so, won't this just engender further distrust?
All ballot images cast will be shared because they're anonymous. Now, there's some talk, well, if somebody votes a Braille ballot, what are you going to do with that? Well, we're going to do what we do now. We're going to duplicate it. They take a Braille ballot and they have people who read it, and then they put a number on the Braille ballot called dupe, and then they make a new ballot that says dupe. These are ballots that coffee stains, they got ripped, they were just funky gunk on it or whatever, that they have to duplicate. So there it is. Even a ballot from a protected voter. Nobody's going to know whose ballot that is. You know, the actual act of voting, folks, in our Constitution is the secret process. Counting is a public process. Voting is secret. Voted is public. Thank you.
I'm just going to pause here for a moment because I want to make an observation that there are still plenty of people that are part of our Zoom educational piece today. Generally, we at least we advertise that it'll be an hour long, but I'm going to, and it's been a little over an hour now. I'm going to continue. There are still plenty of questions. And as long as there's people on the screen and they're still alive and well and listening, I'm going to continue with the questions. Okay, everybody? Real quick question. What will the cost of this be?
You know, very little. I know that the last time it was reviewed for cost, they said it was insignificant, is what they said. Okay. Stephen Rosenfeld here, by the way, who's had his hand up, and he's a very famous reporter.
I'm sorry, I haven't seen his hand because I don't get all the images or all the pictures here in the view. So you had your hand up. Would you like to?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, I see you now. Okay, I'm sorry. Yes. Go right ahead, Stephen.
So I'm a national political reporter. I've covered politics and elections for 30-something years. I was an NPR reporter, Christian Science Monitor, and I first covered ballot images in the 2018 multiple recounts in Florida. And that's when I saw in person why they are so persuasive. And it was, and so Maria Lyman asks a very important question, which is this. She says, if the data is available, no one can say that it can't be refuted. Well, she says that's a pipe dream. and look at January 6th. But so here's the thing about this that is, I want to address that. Maria is correct, and the left, and personally, I've been a Democrat. I was Bernie Sanders' press secretary when he first got elected to the House. That's a little of my history besides being a reporter. The left has assumed that facts will set you free. And election officials basically will say, trust us, we're experts. And the Republicans now have seized the initiative with robbing or stealing the transparency rhetoric. And that's really a problem. And when I try to get people to write about this, to let me write about this, they don't want to hear this, by the way. I'm talking about like the Washington Monthly, the New Republic, and because but the thing is this, with ballot image audits, or ballot images, you're talking about a screenshot of a ballot, and it's the starting line. And if you compare the starting line of the counting to the finish line, and things match, and they may not always match, but if they match, you know that whatever happens in the middle worked. And if something doesn't match, you can figure out what's happening. So the reason I'm saying this is we're talking about elections right now, in a very cerebral way. But this is the only piece of evidence that's visual. And it implies that you have to let people draw their own conclusions and trust that enough of them, not all of them, but enough people in the center right will not believe the crazy garbage. Now, there will be some, and this was the case in 2020 and 2022. You saw it in Maricopa with the misaligned, printing of those ballots. They'll look for a mistake, and they will run, and they'll say the sky is falling, everything has to be done over. We can't trust a thing. And that is sort of the MO. And that's what happened in Antrim, Michigan. And that's what happened in Mesa County, Colorado. That's what, what's his name? The My Pillow guy is all about. But the point here is that we're in a moment in our culture where you can't tell anybody anything. So you have to be willing to let people draw their own conclusions. And this is the only piece of visual evidence that you can look at that easily explains what happened immediately after an election. And that's what makes it really different from everything else that's out there. It's not a mathematical process where you have to do it, you're estimating based on statistics or this, that, and the other. And the thing that I saw is this. So I'm in Florida, John was there too. People are pulling up their pickup trucks. They're making all kinds of noise outside of election headquarters. And nobody knows what's going on behind those doors. You're peering through windows. Imagine instead if you could say, okay, we disagree about these ballots. Let's take a look at them in public and decide what the voter's intent was. Let's all look. And that's the difference with this. And a lot of election officials, I'll wind this up, don't want to expose that they make mistakes because they're humans. And people don't realize how complicated it is to run elections because you have to set up and configure hundreds of computers to work properly that spend most of the time in cold warehouses. So people make mistakes. And you have to be able to say, okay, it was a mistake. We found it, we fixed it. But the thing about this, so to Maria, it's not that the data or the truth will set you free. It's more like, what can you do to lower the temperature in the room so that people who are reasonable and not complete cultists, might look at something and say, hey, everybody, let's just take this down a couple of notches. And there's nothing else in these systems that allows you to look at something that's easily understood quickly after election day. So for example, one last thing, we have all this security in elections, but we have no trust. Now, why is that? What can you do about that? And I'm telling you, a lot of the Washington groups, the Brennan centers, all the people who have been pushing all these cybersecurity, they don't want to acknowledge that trust is a problem. So how can you fix that problem? given that we are not inventing election systems, we have to work with what is given to us. So, you know, and that's been my interest in covering this as a reporter, because it's like, what, this is the bullseye of the evidence trail. It's not made up garbage. It's not historical voting patterns or something else that people, you know, on Mike Lindell will argue about. It's, does the starting line, which is a screenshot, we all know what screenshots are, match the finish line, which is basically a big spreadsheet. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't, well, let's look at what might be broken and then get to it quickly. And that's the promise here. And that's exactly what the ninjas didn't know how to do. They tried to recount those ballots more than a half dozen times, and they failed every single time. And because it went on forever, it was a propaganda exercise where they won, because legislatures can abuse their power that way, because they're not like lawyers who will lose a law license if they lie in court. The only accountability they have is the next election. And a lot of people think, well, you'll forget what I did 20 months ago. So anyway, the point here, though, to Maria, is it's a visual tool. It's a way to trust people to draw their own conclusions. And we have to trust that enough people are sane enough to sort of act like adults and not idiots. And that's really, you know, we can be technical, but that is sort of the emotional piece of this. So thank you all for letting me say that. I appreciate that.
Thanks, Stephen. I see that Maria, whose name has been invoked here a few times, has a question, I think a follow-up. So Maria, did I see that correctly? And if that is, you go ahead. I don't see you on the screen now, but Maria?
Mike, I apologize. I can't lower my hand on my iPhone.
Oh, okay. So you're good, in other words?
I'm good, and thank you so much, Steve,
Yeah.
for
Okay.
responding.
Thank you for
You bet.
listening.
Okay, so I'm going to continue on. There are still a lot of questions, and some, you know, there's a whole host of interesting new kinds of questions. So how will these bills safeguard against data manipulation?
That's an easy question to answer, and I'll tell you why. Okay. You know, in 2007 is the first court case I was heavily involved in. It was with Bill Reisner. And we were fighting about getting the databases for the D-Bolt system. And at one point, they brought in this guy from, Merle King from Georgia, really bad guy known in the industry. And so anyway, they were accusing that if these databases got in the wild, that they would call mayhem and chaos. Okay. And we won the case. But anyway, at one point in time, Bill took the guy down so low and explained it. He said to him, have you ever heard being tarred and feathered and run on a tail on a rail? The county has the original ballots. The county has the original images. The county is not going to redact anything because the images need to match the original ballot like a fingerprint. So if you think that you can game the system and start taking images and changing them, we'll instantly know, because the ballot is married to the ballot image. And you got just a copy by the click of a mouse that we can measure and look at, and you're in trouble if you tamper.
What prevents the Arizona State Senate from using strike all and change the entire bill almost last minute before the vote?
Well, somebody better read the bill, because, you know, hey, you always have to be fearful of that. I'm always worried about poison pills coming in at the very end. Okay. My suggestion is that we organize as Democrats, we everybody support it. And then on the last vote is when you jump in. That way they can't claim that you were for it before you were against it. Play that trick. Okay.
So here's another question for Maria. Is now the right time to work with the Arizona GOP on transparency issues when they are trying to take away the right to vote by mail, have drop boxes, mandate additional voter ID requirements, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, I certainly agree with you. I'm not going to help those bills at all. Okay. And, but you know, a broken clock is capable of being correct twice a day.
Okay, yes. So if this bill and the benefits are as self-evident as the speaker advances, why are so many listening seemingly so skeptical? I'm not convinced, especially when Ken Bennett's name is mentioned.
This is the part that's such a shame because it's clear. I mean, you guys are all wounded by these Republicans, you know, and their name comes up and you just want to oppose it just on gut reaction. So, but please hear what I'm saying, that in Florida, why is the Florida State Democratic Party for Ballot Images? Because they're the underdog in Florida and the Republican Party has a supermajority, and there's a lot of doubt and trust in elections in Florida and whether they're being operated correctly all the time. I'm fortunate in my county. I think we have a really good administrator, but that's not true in all the counties. So if you set aside the partisan part of this and just look at the actual bill and what it's going to accomplish, and it just occurred to me, you know, the far right wing Republicans want this bill because they have been doubting the results of the election. The Democrats don't want to acknowledge that there might have been a problem with the election. Of course, none of us want to acknowledge that, and we're sure there wasn't. But we want this bill because we want those far right Republicans to be able to see, like Steve Rosenfeld said, election administrators around the country have written about how they've had like a really close contest and people were all up in arms and they were going to contest the election. And then they look at the ballot images and they go, oh yeah, I see that. I actually did lose. They see the actual ovals filled in. They see how people voted, not individual people, you know, not identifying people, but they just see what happened. So we want this bill because we want to shut these other people up and stop these false claims. And the day may come when you guys want to know that an election was actually accurate, you know, when you have doubts. So anyway, so I saw someone raise their hand. Laura?
Mickey did.
Is there?
Oh, Mickey.
Let me just ask the question, supposing the Republican gubernatorial candidate had been declared the winner in 2022, would you like to have seen the ballots and counted the votes yourself before believing that she really did win? Just think about it.
Well, the only thing I would think is that it's crazy what's going on, and it just can't keep going on like this.
Scrolling down in the chat, there's been a lot of discussion and a lot of comments, not necessarily questions, about the credibility of Ken Bennett and the fact that he is endorsing this bill has a lot of people really distrusting it. And I don't know if you want to comment on that anymore than you already have.
Well, I'd like
go right ahead.
Yeah, just again, I ask each of you, if the bill is really short, please, based on what you've heard tonight, just read the bill and forget who's endorsing it and who's not, and ask yourself, is this good for Arizona and is this good for the country? Because you know, please, I keep asking you, but please don't block yourself from understanding what we're trying to accomplish here based on who is endorsing it. Because in this case, it's really not relevant. And if you start to do that, remember the Democrats in Florida who are fighting for 4 years. We've had this lawsuit going, just trying to get the counties to save the damn images. And being fought and stopped and blocked at every turn. And that's the state Democratic Party and the local parties. And we've had activists, left-leaning activist groups protesting at election offices, doing drive-by protests, save the ballot images. And now here in Arizona, the Democrats have a chance to accomplish this great thing. And because we have Ken Bennett and other people endorsing it, they want to be against it, and it's just it makes me so crazy. I can't tell you. It's just it's just beyond the beyond that we have this situation going
Susan,
on.
I don't think that Ken Bennett is the sole reason why some people are questioning the bill. I think that our concerns have expressed a wider range of issues than just that.
Thank you, Tracy. I recognize I only was responding to that one particular comment that Mike had just read from the chat. So I do understand that. And I hope that some of your concerns are addressed now. This was really a lot of work to try to revise this bill to address some of the concerns that we'd heard. So please do take a look at it. Look at the penalties now for the things that had concerned you. It's now harder to access the voter list. It's not just going to be posted publicly. And remember, when you do see that those names are accessible, that they're already accessible by statute. The people can already get all that information statewide and even more information than is being asked for in this bill. So this is nothing new. It's just part of a total plan to make people be able to have an evidence-based election, be able to verify the election.
So I think I've gotten through the chat pretty extensively. I apologize if I missed one or two. That wasn't intentional. And I have a question for you, John.
Yeah.
And that is, do you stand to make a lot of money if this bill passes?
Yeah, you know, after I pass the bill, I'm planning to move to South America and see if I can cause trouble down there. No, listen, I did this because I was a witness to a crime. And I sat on a curb in November 2004 after reading of some famous reporters' articles about journalism on fire. And I had just moved back from Mexico, and I thought I was losing my mind when I got back to the country because I had left for like a dozen years. And I saw the changes. And then I became a cluster captain, and I caught something really bad. And it's in a book by Mark Crispin Miller called Fooled Again, How the Right Stole the 2004 Election and They'll Steal the Next One. People like me and Mickey Donahoe and John McCarthy, you know, Steve Rosenfeld, who's been doing and covering this beat ever since he started in Ohio working this. There's some really fascinating people on this call that understand that we have to find a way that we can end this battle and get out of this situation. And you know, and I use this a kind of a funny analogy, but you know, democracy truly is built on 4 boxes. And I'm on one right now, and that's the soapbox. And then somebody braves runs and they run for office. And so that is the ballot box. And they got beat up and something went really wrong in the election. And they go to the jury box, and that they find that the system is in a loop and that there's no way that you can challenge an election. And so you go in despair. But you have to remember there's 4 boxes involved here. And when that happens, and we start believing our democracy has failed, be wary of the people who will reach for the cartridge box. That's a scary thing. It really is. And so we are trying to use simple solutions. Transparency is one. And you know, I think that part I said about Abraham Lincoln, so true. If we give the people the truth, they really might make the right decision. Okay. And, you know, social media, what's going on out here, it's devastating to our country. I have granddaughters. Social media is getting to them. Wow. And then we have to worry about them getting shot going to school.
Arthur, you have your hand up.
Yes,
Is that you?
Yeah,
you
thank
intend
you.
to-
I would like to just put in one other thing, and that is I had the privilege of being in I was an intern in the office of then Senator Kuechel from California when the Civil Rights Bill was getting debated and finally passed in the United States Senate. And the guy who finally put that over the top was Everett Dirksen, Republican. And there were a lot of things that Dirksen did that I didn't like. But he got on board this one and made the difference. I too have kind of looked at the chat, and I have seen a fair amount of fear of Ken Bennett, and I have been on a few calls with him about this bill, and it seems to me that somebody like that can be, even supportive of some of these things which we would consider voter suppression, only voter ID and stuff like that, but still wanting to have the ballots counted correctly. And so I wouldn't tar that person because of other pieces that he's done.
Well, that's about an hour and a half now, and things seem to have slowed down a bit. Okay, let me get back into the chat. I got to scroll down, and there might be a couple more. But if I can, for just a quick moment, because this is the AUDIT program, this is going to be the commercial moment. If you enjoyed this program, rest assured there will be more in the future. We had a terrific one last month with the Santa Cruz Sheriff, Hathaway, talking about what's really going on the border. It was extremely well received. There's a lot of people involved in this particular program, still here, still holding on. And I want you to know that there will be more in the future. Next month, I'd like to advertise, we're going to have just equally exciting program with a gentleman by the name of Jim Hall, who is the director of Arizonans for Charter School Accountability. And he has a lot of revealing things to teach us about charter schools and how their finances work. And it should prove to be a great program. Again, that's the third Thursday in April. I don't happen to know what it is. It's the 20th. But at any rate, if you really like what we're doing here, some kind of contribution to the AUDIT would be great. I'm going to put up our website right now, and you can easily go to it. And, oh, come on. Why aren't you going up right now? There you go. Yavdem.org, our opening page, our home page, all the way to the right. You'll see donate. Click onto that, and that'll bring you to our Circle of Friends program. And there's some easy links to make a donation. And we'd really appreciate that and help further work of the AUDITs. That's it for my commercial. There are still people here.
Mike, could I speak quickly to something when you have a minute? Susan Pinchon.
I don't see who.
Oh, it's Susan Pinchon again.
Oh, yeah. Go right ahead.
Thank you so much. You know, dealing with this whole thing about the partisan issue about who's supporting the bill, and please stop and think about who is supporting this bill. Your Democratic Secretary of State, Adrian Fontes. So if you're still having questions, maybe get hold of his office and say, why are you supporting a bill that's been, proposed by a Republican? He's supporting it because he understands elections and he sees that this is going to help solve the problem in Arizona. Look at Mickey Donahoe, who's on this call, an ex-NSA, Mickey, forgive me if I don't get your title exactly right, computer security expert, longtime, lifetime Democrat, helping to draft and support this bill. Dr. Tom Ryan, an electronics engineer with huge computer and electronics background, a lifetime Democrat, supporting this bill. Me, Susan from Florida, a lifetime Democrat with 20 years, well, no, since 2004, investigating elections, traveling around the country, monitoring elections, understanding elections, helping to draft and support this bill. John Brakey, giving his life's work, a lifetime Democrat, who saw the importance of ballot images back as early as 2006, before these were even in voting systems, and wanted to go and take pictures of the ballots because he knew that pictures of the ballots would be evidence. And people have actually called this the Brakey method, some people around the country in elections, because he saw it so early on. John McCarthy, who's here from the renowned and well-respected National Voting Rights Organization, Verified Voting, who has been helped to write these risk limiting audit bills and methods, now is a big supporter of ballot images, and I'm guessing a lifetime Democrat. Jan Ben-Dor, because they're a nonpartisan, we're all nonpartisan organizations because they're election organizations, and we know that elections have to be nonpartisan, but personally, we're Democrats. Jan Ben-Dor from Michigan, an elections administrator running Michigan Election Reform organization for 15, 20 years, who believes strongly in these ballot images. So please look at all the people who really know elections and understand elections. And forgive me, I mean, Arlene Leaf is on this call, who's also with Audit USA, but who has been, working. We really believe in this. But thank you. And thank you all for listening. And I just hope you'll keep an open mind and read this and ask questions. Call Adrian Fontes's office. Don't just dismiss it out of hand, please. Thank you.
Thank everybody for who's still online and who joined us this evening. It's really been a program that has had widespread interest, literally from all over the country. And I'm very proud to be a part of a program that brought people together for this discussion. And Laura, I wonder if you could give us a quick, me at least, maybe others are interested, a quick report on how many were who linked on today.
We had about 50 people at one time. And as the program ended at approximately 7:30, we had some people drop off then, but there's still about 30 people on right now.
Yeah, okay. Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And
Thank you.
don't forget us again next month.